Um, yeah, like everyone says, like save the best for the last. So I'm going to talk about the test working group. I'm from Keysight. My name is Mano. I'm a product manager there. I'm also joined by Vijay, my colleague, who will be presenting part of the talk as well. So I happen to chair the test working group of DENT. Why did we form the test working group? And I'm going to just very simply bring about my 4 bullets here. The main objective of forming the test working group being testing, being maintaining the quality of the code at every stage of integration. We check every PR going through the testing, and I'm going to talk about the different levels of tests that we have integrated into the DENT pipeline. As any open source or any continuous development project that works today, we have to have a CI/CD pipeline, and obviously we augment that with a continuous test integrated into the CI/CD pipeline so that we maintain the code quality at every stage of the release. Another very important aspect that we have in the TWG charter is to always check on the interoperability, because this kind of an open source project, as everybody in the previous speakers mentioned, right? There are so many contributors, so many collaborators, so many vendors in this ecosystem. So we need to put together test beds that can actually verify that all these different vendors in this ecosystem can interop with each other. And I'm going to talk a little bit on how we are doing the interop testing in a bit. Being from Keysight, we always, testing is our main mantra, and we've always been trying to be vendor neutral. So, and also with strong support from the community, from Amazon, from Acton, DNI, and everyone, we have been able to put together a test framework which is vendor neutral. So we have a standard yardstick to qualify each and every platform in this ecosystem. What that has enabled, so last but not least, before I miss that, we built the community lab. Keysight has a lab with different vendors in it, and it's called the System Integration Test Lab, which has put together an interop setup with different vendors and with Keysight test tools in it. More about this in a minute. What that has enabled us to do is we have been able to standardize the testing procedure. We have been able to provide community access to state-of-the-art test tools, to state-of-the-art test beds. And also what it has enabled is for the end users a single source of truth on how to measure the quality across different platforms. So a quick overview of the timeline, as previous speakers mentioned, like Steve mentioned, with 2019, DENT was started, 2019 December, I think Jason mentioned that timeline. We were brought in, like we started engaging with this ecosystem back in 2020 when the test working group was formed. And then we started, and then in 2021 we made the testing repo public. We have a GitHub where we contribute all the test framework and the test cases. And then in 2021 we provisioned what we call the System Integration Lab with different vendors and the testing integrated into a common framework. And in 2022 onwards, we are onboarding 200 plus more test cases to have complete feature coverage until DENT version 3. A little bit more about drilling down into the test beds. So we typically have two kinds of test beds that we have defined until now, which is the functional test bed, which is a smaller scale test bed, more focused on how the members can facilitate that test bed in their facility. It's a smaller scale and easily replicable test bed. And then we have the system integration test bed, which is a more system level, verifying the interops, and also we've provisioned that for potential customer POCs and evaluations. As I said, the functional test beds are more focused on how the members can build an easy test bed and have testing coverage. And the community lab has the system test bed, which is more of the system level coverage. However, all this is built under a common test framework. We call it the DENT test framework. And what it has enabled us to do is, with the member labs, it's easy to have onboarding and also onboarding new features and new vendors onto the ecosystem. And also from with the community lab and the system integration lab, it has facilitated us to build real-world scenarios into the testing. So again, I want to stress that this system integration lab is a clear differentiator in DENT as an open source project. It's been put together with a strong community participation of all the vendors contributing their switches and gears to build this community lab. And the common test framework, what it is enabling is to bring a synergy across the different vendors in the ecosystem to have a standard yardstick to measure the quality of the release going forward. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vijay to cover the rest of the slides.
Thanks, Manu. So here we're looking at the DENT PyTest framework. So we decided to go with the PyTest framework, which is the most common test framework for DENT testing. And it consists of mainly the three parts, which is the Jenkins server for build maintenance and CI/CD pipeline management. And then we have the test server, which runs the tools required for testing. And then we have the rest of the DENT switches, which are part of the physical setup of DENT testing. So code quality was paramount as part of the test working group charter. So we wanted to ensure that we are running tests at every single level. And that's one of the reasons why we put this DENT workflow together, to ensure that we are testing at each and every level, both at the member test bed as well as the community test beds. We have seen this slide before. So the challenge is, how do we simulate this kind of realistic enterprise edge traffic, which simulates thousands of different cameras, POEs across the enterprise edge. Also, the challenge is, how do we look at customer KPIs like scale, performance, resiliency, security, and latency, and all of these. So to put all of this together, we built the SIT lab in Keysight. This is from contributions from all the members, and this includes distributed switches, aggregator switches, and infrastructure switches in the Keysight lab. It helps us to simulate realistic KPI for a real store network. Day 1, day 2 readiness tests like ECMP, failover, resiliency, and convergence. This also helps, like Manu mentioned, for customer POCs and multi-vendor interop. We have also been able to put together end-user driven test topologies and focus on real deployment scenarios. So call to action, we have a GitHub repo. That's where we have hosted the DENT testing framework. So you're welcome to involve and contribute. And we also have a mailing list where you can subscribe. Any questions? So we have a regular cadence where we run tests on a weekly basis with one of the builds that we pull from the CI/CD pipeline. But as of now, we are working with Edge Core to put together a lab as a service. And once that is instituted, we will, like I said, it'll all be automated. And that will mean that on a regular basis, we'll be pulling in from the CI/CD pipeline and running the tests. We have been getting consistent results, but it's really difficult to say at this point in time because we don't have all of the pieces running together, all of it automated in the ecosystem. I think once we have all of the pieces put together, we'll probably be able to share that and put it in the community on what results we are seeing. So we are only looking at the system integrated SIT lab, so system integration tests. Whatever we pull from the repo are mostly functional tests. But I think the focus here or the presentation here or the talk here was mostly about focusing on the interop or multi-vendor setup.